States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please take the roll.
Yes. Trustee Guyer.
Here.
Trustee Spurling. Here. Trustee Bauman.
Here.
Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
Trustee Betzinger.
I would now seek nominations for President Pro Tem for the evening.
I'd like to nominate Teresa Spurling, trustee Spurling.
Second.
In a second, any other nominations? All right, will you please take the roll?
Yes. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
All right.
Can
meeting
we,
is yours.
and I'm not sure procedurally, but can we do this, and Attorney Julian, so that we don't have to do this at every meeting?
Well, I think that that's on a later agenda, have a more
Okay,
standing order.
thank you.
I think it's
Okay.
on, for the next meeting, is what I believe.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, we will open up the public participation portion of the meeting. We will start with public comments. This is a 2-minute opportunity to address the board. We would ask you to come down and sign in, let us know your name and where you live, and you have 2 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the board who's not on the agenda? Yes, sir, please come down, right down here to the front. Sure. Yeah, so we can see you and then we'll be able to hear you.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Rob Van Hedloff. I live on 2391 Mayfield Drive, which the reason that I'm here tonight is to just basically make a couple of comments and pose a couple of questions based on that closure. I prepared this document. You should all have a copy of it in front of you. Basically 2 items, and I will obviously read through all of this, but I just wanted to make a couple of comments and statements. Item number
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. Robert, they'll talk about it at the staff level, and we'll get back with some answers. Okay, thank you. Is there any other members of the public that would like to address the board at this time? Okay, next on the agenda, we have Ms. Nicole Barron to address the board regarding fence heights. Nicole, please come up.
Thank you all for letting me speak to you tonight. And Steve, thank you so much for kind of guiding me through this process since I've not done this before. So I appreciate it. So I did want to talk to you guys about the UDO that was just passed in the fence heights. I'm a little late to the game. Horses kind of left the barn. I get it. My work schedule and my travel schedule just isn't conducive for making it here often. But I have a little concern about the fence height. I've been a resident of Montgomery for about 20 years. I built my house. At the time, we had a homeowners association. It allowed for 4-foot chain link fencing. It wasn't really great for the type of animals I have. I have Doberman pinschers. Give you a little background. I am a trainer. I show and campaign Dobermans. I do performance events. My dogs are therapy dogs, and they work up at Great Lakes Naval Base with PTSD support groups. So these are good citizens. These are not the average Doberman that's just out there. These are trained dogs, great temperaments. However, my current puppy, who is no longer a puppy, has decided that the 4-foot fence is not going to keep her contained. She wants to go see the neighbor's husky. She thinks the kids next door are fabulous, and she wants to be on that side of the fence. We're working on the training aspect of it. She's never left outside alone, but she gets over that fence like that. And when she's over that fence, now it's a game. I have to go grab her. I have to do the training portion of it. It's dangerous for everybody involved. It's dangerous for her jumping that fence. It's dangerous for whoever's on the other side of that fence. And it's dangerous for my dog, because I don't know the temperaments of those dogs. I don't know what those kids are going to do. It gets even a little more scary at night. I'm backed up to the cornfield on Orchard. We have coyote back there. So the coyote, they never get close enough that I can see their faces, but I see the glowing eyes. We hear them crying at night, doing their hunting calls. The dogs hear it. I go out there, it's dark back there, even with my light on. So there is a concern with that. Can they jump a 5-foot fence? I don't know. She launches over a 4-foot fence without touching it. So 5 foot, little sketchy. 6 foot, I know she can't get over. I know that we have allowed 6-foot fences in the village outside of homeowners associations and any other ordinances for the duration I've lived here. I checked the ordinances back in, I want to say the early winter, when I started realizing I needed to change my fence. I currently have a 4-foot fence, like I said. Called the fence companies, of course, they're backed up forever. Finally get them out for an estimate, and we contract on a fence, 6-foot fence. They said, you have to go get a permit. Not a problem. I can do this. I go get the permit. They said, 5-foot fence. I first checked the website and saw it was only 5-foot fence, so I called. They said, no, that changed in March. Now it's 5-foot fences. So now I've got this contract for a 6-foot fence. I've got a dog who's jumping the fence, and I have no options. So I understand, like I said, the horse has left the barn. We're already past this. However, I'm going to tell you what I do for a living. I'm a continual improvement manager for a global company. I understand that stuff changes on a daily basis. We may have passed an ordinance. We may have gone through all that. There is a way to grandfather in things. There's a way to back things up. There's a way to listen to the voice of the customer, your customer or your residents. So my question is, my understanding is that there was a survey taken. Is that correct? Or was there a poll taken where the residents were allowed to have a voice?
There was not a formal survey.
Okay.
It was just sort of an inquiry and
An inquiry.
very small response.
Do you know what kind of response we got?
Well, there was more than just a survey. There was also public meetings. There was CMA. This was
Yes.
It went
2
on.
years worth of conversation
Yeah.
relating to fence heights.
Understood, yeah, and like I said, I'm late to the game, that's my fault, I can understand that and I can accept that, but my understanding also was that there were people that did come forward and say, we still want 6-foot fences, we should be allowed if we are outside of a homeowners association, if we're part of the village. So my concern is that maybe those voices were not necessarily listened to the way they should have been. Or maybe there's a reason outside of aesthetics, because I understand what aesthetics are. I understand we want this village to look beautiful. I pay taxes. I want my property value to go up. However, the aesthetics in my neighborhood right now are 6-foot fences, 4-foot chain link fences, 4-foot wood fences. There's no aesthetic. So I would like to propose that this be revisited and that we take a look at maybe grandfathering in some sort of a change so that those of us that have concerns with our animals, we want to keep our neighbors safe, we want to keep our property safe, we have some recourse. Because I was told if we come for a variance that we will not get that variance, that it has to be properly related, that it has to be property related. It cannot be based on my personal situation with my dog. I think we need to have a little more openness to what residents are looking for. Are there enough residents that oppose that 5-foot fence, that would like that 6-foot fence option? I am one of them. I don't have a formal, signature list or any kind of petition, because that's not what I'm here for. But I do have letters stating that they do support that 6-foot fence option, and that maybe we should go back and rethink of this a little bit and see if there is something we can do for those of us that want that option. Because it does come down to, am I going to stay in my house if I can't keep my dog safe? And that's a big concern for me. So thank you guys for letting me speak to you, and I hope that we can go back and find a solution for this that will satisfy everybody.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Director App, did you have anything that you wanted to comment on with that?
As you know, this is a fairly recent ordinance. Some of the research, as she said, there was a survey that was done. As I recall, I thought I had printed out, but apparently I didn't. But as I recall, more than 50% of the residents that did respond to it did say the preference was for a 6-foot fence. We did look into what some of the other surrounding communities had. Again, I don't know if that was something that was discussed or presented to you as you were going through the process, but a majority of the other communities in this area do allow for a 6-foot fence. So just something to consider as you think about that. But obviously, this was a process that we went through, and one of the major concerns in looking at fences was that you have several annexation agreements that will be phasing out here in the next 5 years, and most of those agreements limited to a 4-foot fence and limited to like a 4-foot cedar fence. So there was this concern, I think, that it was going to be carte blanche, and all of a sudden there was going to be potential for influx of 6-foot fences, because that's what was allowed, and could have a detrimental impact to the feeling of a neighborhood if all of a sudden everything was being replaced with a 6-foot fence and somebody had just put in a 4-foot fence. So the idea was to try to provide some stability in that, and I think the compromise was a 5-foot fence. But again, it's at your discretion to decide how you want to move forward, and staff is happy to look into different options and what other communities do as far as kind of protecting that aesthetic, but still providing for a reasonable fence height.
What would that look like for us to revisit this
You can
in
just
terms
direct-
of the UDO?
Well, it would require a text amendment. We do have, as we've gone through, some other things that we've found that were either unclear or missing from the UDO, so there's some cleanup that we're already looking at trying to do. So this could be something that we include as we look at that and present to you, just some more information, and you can determine whether you want to move forward with the public hearing for a text amendment with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it would come back to you as an ordinance to adopt, and it would amend the code.
When we initially discussed this at board level, my subdivision, I think it's it's really loud, 42 or 48 inches, or maybe 54 inches or whatever. But I'm also under an HOA. So in order to get rid of the HOA, it takes an act of God, because you have to get people to vote and do that. I'm going to be honest, I was one of the ones that voted for a 5-foot, but Trustee Sperling and I talked about this, and I've gotten feedback from residents. I'm willing to revisit and look at it and just kind of listen, because maybe I'm thinking too specific, because my concern was I didn't want it to be like a jail yard setting, You know, I'm 6'1", and I can't see over a 6-foot fence, and so most people can't see over a 6-foot fence. And I like that open feel, but I understand that there are other issues that I don't think about, because we don't have dogs, so I get it. So I'm willing to revisit it.
Okay, great. Any other board members have any comments, interest in revisiting the fence height?
I think so. I think it would be proactive to have that conversation. I'm a dog person, so don't take this the wrong way, but I think Dobermans have, or any dog for that matter, jumps a fence, anyone with kids has an issue. There was a dog behind me, a neighbor, at one point. We'd hang over the fence talk. Dog grabbed a hold of my hand. We had a 2-year-old, boom, fence went up. So I think it's advantageous for us to have that conversation. If this comes wrong, your neighbors probably know you, know your animals, know they're safe, but then it may become the conversations to us, hey, our neighbor's dog just keeps jumping over the fence. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to protect me? So I'd like to have that conversation so we can at least make things so that it's not so, you have to have policy. Policy's there for a reason, but we have to be able to look at each individual scenario as well.
And the fact that
I'd like that very
6-foot
much.
fences were allowed previously is something that kind of sticks with me personally. Trustee Guyer, interest in revisiting the fence height?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It was a 2.5 year process we went through. Staff has changed since we
Right.
implemented the new UDO. And I wouldn't mind hearing some other options. I think there was some information that's available now that we didn't have when we made the decision.
Right.
And I would like to hear that information. And I have no problem revisiting it.
And of course, there's so much more to the UDO than just fence heights, but you know, this
Correct.
has been a sticking point. Trustee Marisak, Trustee Betzinger, interest in revisiting?
I'm not necessarily a fan of going back in time, but, you know, the majority of the board is looking at being open to revisiting. I would be happy to be a part of that conversation.
Tom?
Yeah, I'd be okay rehaving the conversation again, but with the understanding that there's been meetings on meetings and hours of discussion about this in this room, in the community room. It's not fresh, it's not new, it's not, haven't you guys thought about? Yeah, my wife would love a 6-foot fence too, but our HOA is not going to allow that either.
Right.
So I'm okay to have the conversation. I'd welcome it. If we're going to search for some community input, I'd like to be a little more strategic with that and a little more intentional, and get some significant feedback, much like the Mayfield closure. If that's something we do, rather than kind of a not as robust survey. So I'm down.
Okay, very good. All good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you. And we will close up that portion of the meeting. The next item is bid opening for 310 North River Street. Who's handling that?
I will handle that. It's going to be a very quick item because we did not receive any bids.
Okay.
So then what's the plan for that parcel? Are we going to get with the local realtor and see if we can have someone shop that for us?
We're going to have to discuss that on Wednesday. We'll discuss it with staff. Today is when it closed. We're still hoping we might get some.
Okay,
So this is news to us too. So
all right, thank you.
we will revisit and let you know.
Okay. All right, moving on to consent agenda. We have the minutes of the village board meeting from May 24th, building report for May 2021, accounts receivable report for May 2021, water production report for May 2021, refuse report for April 2021, and accounts payable through June 10th, 2021 in the amount of $441,948.95. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Penny, take the roll, please.
Yes. Trustee Marisak,
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger,
Yes.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
Trustee Bauman,
Yes.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes?
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to items for separate action. The first two items are related, and I will turn that over to Director Abt.
Yes. The petitioner, JB Commodities, is requesting approval of an amendment to a special use for a planned unit development for the Montgomery Business Center. This would be Unit 2. This is located north of Alcott Road. Lot 1 is located west of the Nexio property there, west of Commerce Drive, and the remaining area is located east of Commerce Drive. Unit 2 includes about 117 acres with 5 buildable lots, the Nell Road extension, and associated detention. The amendments include the reconfiguration of the lots for this development and would allow for outdoor storage for parking and/or storage of trucks, semi-trailer trucks and trailers, stacking of trailers, shipping containers, and similar cargo, and outdoor storage of goods, materials, equipment, and associated staging for lots 3 and 5 without an additional public hearing. The proposed amendment would also allow a maximum 40-foot height for outdoor storage, stacking height there for outdoor storage on Lot 5 specifically. The Planning and Zoning Commission held their public hearing on June 3rd and recommended approval of the amendment with conditions that are outlined in your report. You also have a copy of the ordinance that would approve the amendment before you. The petitioner is also here to answer any questions that you might have.
So the first item is simply to accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission, so we can go ahead and entertain a motion for accepting that recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Penny, take the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger? Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman,
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
This is accepting the recommendation only?
Just simply the recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, and is there discussion on the item, the ordinance item, which is at first reading?
I was at the Plan Commission meeting, and I don't understand necessarily the Plan Commission's concern about the 40-foot height for outdoor storage, considering we have a sugar dome there that's, 140 feet tall? And we have VVF, which is much taller than the 40 feet. So for me, the 40 feet is a non-issue. I have no issue with that. And I talked to Director App and Mr. Zoffel regarding Nell Road and the extension of Nell Road. And in what I'm reading here, is this saying the developer is going to bear all of the cost of the extension of Nell Road?
It says that they can come and request the village to use TIF funds or, I mean,
But it's not saying you're going to be responsible for 100% of the cost and whatever is.
it may be if the board says no to.
So
use of TIF
that is
funds
to be
or-
discussed
that's
at a
in-
later
right,
point.
That's in,
Okay.
that's in your
All right.
hands. We
Okay.
can't, that's policy, so the staff, we couldn't speak to that.
Then I have no issues.
Any other questions or comments? First reading, is there any opposition to putting this on consent?
No.
Okay, we'll put that on consent for next week. Thank you. All right, item C, award of contract for bid package number 3.41 for precast plank for the new Public Works facility to Stresscore in the amount of $218,000. I believe we have a couple of these coming up. Director Wolf, please.
Thank you, Trustee Spurling. So on March 24th, the Village of Montgomery posted bids for bid package number 1 for the construction of the new Public Works facility. Bid package number 1 consisted of 3 different separate bid packages. So before you first is bid package 3.41 for precast plank. The low bidder for this project was, Stresscore. Stresscore was the only bidder that submitted. To my understanding, there are only 2 companies, manufacturers that produce this material. After talking with Camozzi Construction, the village's project manager, we feel comfortable moving forward with Stresscore. It is a under budgeted item by $101,080, and we are requesting the board's approval tonight to move forward. If there's any questions, I can answer those at this time.
I'm thinking we should talk about items, all 3 of these together, because what The other two items are over budget, and so we need to discuss that, I think, as a package so that you can see where we are overall before you vote on one and then get,
Hit with the next?
So you don't want us to be happy for their first one, you want us to be pissed off the whole time?
no. I think
Yeah.
we're gonna try and keep you happy, but
I have, trustee Betzinger just mentioned, and I was about to ask the same question. Shouldn't we be having the conversation about the issuance of bonds before we award a contract? We award the contracts and then the board decides not to issue the bonds?
well,
Aren't we in trouble?
you already authorized the bond issuance,
Which is the
and the bond sale has occurred earlier today.
Okay.
So that's why we're discussing these items
Here we
first.
go, that's what I,
Hey, wait.
information.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
The money is there, we just need to discuss.
Just so I can put this into my calculator clearly, thank you, Justin. What was that under budget amount? 101,080?
101080.
Thank you. Just keeping score.
Director Wolf, do you want to cover the next two items as well?
Cover all the items,
Oh,
so.
it gets worse.
It does. So through the process, we also put out, as part of those other two bid packages, one was for precast wall panels, and the other was for structural steel. So through the process of accepting bids and opening bid packages, it became apparent to us that we are substantially over budget. So through this process, we obviously, staff began working with our construction team from Camozy to start identifying different ways to evaluate and whether or not we should move forward with the project, push the start date, or make concessions within the existing budget to be able to accommodate these increases. So through the process, we have looked at many different alternatives. At this point in time, we're recommending that we stay consistent, move on with the current schedule. There are several items too as part of these bid items where we can make valued engineering as part of this process. So the bids that we may be accepting today, we could potentially be looking at price reductions. One of the key things to identify in the precast wall panel specifically was there was an alternate one, so which changes the apparent low bidder once the village accepts bid alternate number one, excuse me. The reason that we're moving forward or asking the board to move forward with the base bid and bid alternate number one would be the reduction in the painting of the precast panels. That would be for an architectural sandblast finish. This cost increase is a cost savings to the village over time. Over the lifespan of the precast, it will need to be repainted multiple times. Current budget number for that is $50,000, so as time goes on, that budget well increases. So we feel at $84,000, that is a value to the village. So that is an increase that we are looking at. Some of the other things that we are looking at to reduce prices, though, consist of many different things that we'll be working with the precaster to identify. Roughly, we've looked at a little over $73,000 in valued engineer estimated cost savings. And then staff has also started to work through, and we've identified several items that we will propose as alternate bids. So those items won't be removed necessarily from the contract or from other additional bid packages to come. But it will allow us the ability to have flexibility in future bid packages if we do see further increases. The steel market right now is extremely volatile. We've noticed that with our bid packages. As you can see from the budgeted amount, we saw a significant increase in the bids that we received. At this point in time, too, I would ask if Todd Barone from Camozy Construction would like to elaborate a little bit more, too, on the industry and kind of our thought process on moving forward with the current time frame.
Before we get to that, can you just go through and how much over are these bids come in from what we
Sure.
had anticipated?
Absolutely. So let's start with the precast wall panels. So precast wall panel, for the base bid, came in at $349,517 over budget. That is for the base bid only, so an additional $84,000.
Hang on, run that number again? And that's the total bid, not the bid amount over?
No, that's the
Nope,
overage.
that's the overage.
The total overage, when you add the negative and the positive, it's, for all three of these, is $680,000.
So, it was I guess before Todd speaks, it was a bad day that day when I didn't go to the bid opening, but they called me in and let me know where we were. The direction I gave them was, you need to find that money then, because we've told the board, this is the budget, that's $15 million.
Well, but at
So
some,
it's over 680,000, but we found 73, right?
Well-
That's what we're hearing?
Well, they found 73 through VE
Okay.
on what was bid. Then Camosi went back and looked through the stuff that hasn't been bid yet, because they had budgeted, not knowing what the structural engineer was going to say was required. So there are some things where they've over budgeted based when they got the actual. So they've made some changes there to the bid packages that are yet to go out that they feel will elicit more savings. And then Director Wolf went through and looked at items that he could pull out. They're going to be bid as alternates, so if the bids come in on budget or over, those things will be wiped out. If the remaining bids come in under, then they can prioritize and possibly add some of those items back in. So,
Can anyone give me an idea how do you reasonably expect to find $500,000 in savings in the next round of bid packages? I mean, is it
Well, that-
remotely,
no, we may not,
Reasonable.
and that's why,
think that
that's gonna we know
happen.
that those alternates very likely go away, but we're bidding them as alternates just to give ourselves the flexibility. But,
Have we determined the cost savings in not doing the railroad crossing to Ockett Road? How much
Yes,
money are
but-
we
but-
saving?
I mean, that was, I think we had 850,000 in there.
Savings?
No,
Or
that's
total
what
cost?
was budgeted for that, and I think now we have it at 300,000. That money's in IRP, so none of that was budgeted in this, the $15 million for this, that was coming out of IRP. And we still plan on taking the 300 left out of IRP. So that's money that wasn't in here, in this budget to begin with, and is still not in this budget.
Was there a contingency amount over and above the budget?
I think we started at 13 million.
Look at,
We started at 13
I
and
don't
we
know what
ended up at
contingencies
15
in
and
there.
now we're
You're
at.
up to 15, but on a usual, isn't there usually
There's
some
a
sort of a?
$500,000 contingency in the budget.
which we used half of that for soil.
so.
There's still another 250 for soil issues in the budget right now.
So we have a $500,000 contingency
And 250 for soil conditions.
I haven't liked this process from the beginning. I've asked questions. BNSF was, let's just say it didn't work, and that's being nice. We have $250,000 on soils that, for whatever reason, we didn't know about. And now we're $608,000 over budget, which I understand it's commodities, which are causing this, but maybe we just push it to next year and see if the pricing comes down.
And that's why we're bringing it forward here, that Todd and Mark think we should still go ahead, and I'll let them explain to you why. But again, that comes down to a policy decision. If the board thinks we should hold off and rebid, we do, but. they said
I have a
we-
question, and it was a question that I asked our finance director and our village administrator when we first started down this process. How are change orders going to be handled? What is the potential for markup? If I'm a subcontractor and I'm building this building and I'm doing steel, if we go through the change order process, what's the maximum overhead and profit? Is it a 10 and 5, a 5 and 5? What is it?
There is no outline for the subcontractor. That's basically what we do is we scrutinize their change order request, sometimes deny it. Basically, it has to be agreed upon before that work can start. No change order work can commence until they have approval. So generally what happens is If a subcontractor requests a change order, they have to verify that it's legit. Most of the time, it's a matter of the architect, the engineer, the owner is asking for a change. The documents have to stand on their own. So the subcontractor has to have a very, very good reason for asking for a change order.
Are they providing labor sheets? When they get a contract, are they providing labor sheets? And so you know.
They have to do certified payroll.
Okay, but if I'm doing a change order and it's for $200,000, you know that I've got X number of hours at X number of rate, and then I've got material and I'm only allowed to mark up the material so much. Those are the contracts that I have to obey by.
Understood, understood. There's a number in the specifications, I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head. It's probably 5 and 10.
Okay,
10% on your own labor, 5% on your subcontract. That's generally what I see in almost every specifications.
and I'm
But-
going to reiterate again that finance you need to have a locked wallet. I don't know what you need to do, but you need to have your hand on that wallet at all times. You need to understand this front and back.
The way it's set up, the subcontractors cannot do any additional work without prior approval. So that paperwork for generating a change order has to be submitted and approved by all three parties: architect, engineer, Camosa Construction, and the owner.
Okay. Thank you.
Once it becomes a change, and everybody agrees, there is no markup on top of that. It's part of the project.
Okay.
As I was saying, we have gone through and I believe found in various places the money to keep the budget where it is. Again, it's I'll let Todd and Mark explain to you that, and then it's really a board decision, do we go forward now? Do we rebid it later if you think things are going to get better? But
I can comment. We went through the entire drawings and specifications to date, and we re-estimated everything that we know is solid. So we do have a 95% structural foundation drawing that came with this package. We didn't bid the concrete out yet, but we now have the documentation to do a proper quantity survey. So we went ahead and did that. There was a lot of savings there because we were not able to anticipate exactly how the slab thickness and footing size would be. We're just guessing when we did the conceptual budget. Now we have the concrete evidence, so we re-estimated that. That saved a substantial amount of money because we're able to use 6-inch slabs in the vehicle storage versus an 8, which is what we had budgeted for. We wanted to be safe, prudent. We've found other savings in some of the site work, savings in different areas. We looked at areas that we could cut the scope of work, still maintain a good operation, but do it in a better way. One of those is we eliminated one of the catwalks in the wash bay. It's something that I would say two catwalks, one on either side, is probably a luxury, so we took one out. But we went through every single line item again to make sure that we could, take some things out, readjust things, redo things, modify things so that we could get the budget closer to where we were when we started. We got as close, we're sitting as close as $200,000, even with that $690,000 hit. To answer your question about moving forward or pushing the project off, the best I can tell you is this market right now with the commodities issues with steel, wood, PVC, it's as wild as it's ever been. I've been doing this for 35 years. Never have we seen this kind of fluctuation in pricing. It is unprecedented. What I can't tell you is when it's going to come down. That's a crystal ball that I don't own. Do I think it'll come down? Yes. When? I don't know. Many times in these situations, it's a ratcheting effect. Prices will go spike and go way up, and then they'll slowly, in small increments, drop over a larger period of time. That could happen in this case. Honestly, for it to come down in the same plane that it went up would almost mean we'd have to be in a recession to do that. That's just the way there's your two options, a ratcheting long-term or a recession. I'm not an economist. I can't begin to tell you what's going to happen, but I don't hear of any indication that we're headed for a recession today. So if we were to postpone it, I don't know if you can postpone it long enough to get the value back. That's the honest God truth. If it's a ratcheting effect, you have to postpone a couple of years probably. And I'm not sure that's prudent either. So our focus and our mindset is to try to get this as close to that original number as we can possibly get it. We're not done yet. Mark and the team have come up with 7 or 8 alternates so far of things that we can eliminate from the project. They equal $770,000, I think. So, if things continue and we keep getting over budget, more of that $700,000 would be eaten up. That's as best I can put it for you as I can. I'm not going to tell you what the best answer is. I'm just going to tell you what the information that we have.
Is there a time frame that we could cancel these contracts without penalty? So let's say we get a little further down the road in the process and all of a sudden something else comes before us and it's $500,000 over. Can we cancel these, the steel and the precast?
What we have done to set up this in a way to give us a little bit of time is we've asked each and every one of the contractors who bid the project to give us their costs that they've included in their bid for their engineering fees. By doing that, that allows us to contract them for the job. They can lock their pricing in, and then we're only on the hook for the engineering fees until we get to the time where we have an approved shop drawing. So that gives us a way to spend a little bit of money, but buy a lot of time. So we did that to get ahead of the game, and also so that we could get into the production times that we need to get into if we are going to start in the fall. We've got precast is on the books right now with the low bidder that we're recommending for production time in the end of October, beginning of November, which is exactly what we wanted. Steel is a delivery time of sometime in the month of late December, early January. Again, will work very well for what we've had arranged right now. But we can contract them now and then have a little bit of time to back off if we want to. I'm not sure what the best scenario is, but certainly if we want to stay on schedule, stay on time, awarding it as quickly as possible is very important because it still is a volatile market. It still could go up.
What are the other, the building materials that fall into this category of having the volatile pricing? What else do we have to go out and bid where we could potentially have this effect?
Well, understand steel is in almost everything. Certainly structural steel, it's 100% steel, so it's affected the most. The precast was affected a little bit because there's steel and precast and reinforcing. There's going to be a little bit in everything. We don't have a lot of wood in this building, so I don't think that market condition is going to affect us a lot. The plumbing, obviously electrical, PVC is inherited on those projects, or that type of work, so they could be affected. You know, there's definitely potential for more things to be over budget. It exists. I won't lie to you.
I mean, after the VE and them reestimating the packages that haven't been bid, we were still about $200,000 over budget, I believe, is my understanding.
Yes, 219.
Yeah, 219. The total of the things that we're doing as alternate bids to be cut is,
770.
771, I think.
so it's more than the 219 we feel we're still short. So if those bids do come in over, we've tried to build in some flexibility there.
Yeah, we have about a $500,000 cushion at the moment.
So for Director Wolf and the staff, I know having these conversations sometimes from staff perspective is hearing it is difficult, because obviously we need a new public works facility. The staff needs a new facility to operate it out, the community does. The question is, does it make sense to try to spend 13, 15 million in a market, like you said, is as volatile as it's been in 3 decades? So it's not a matter that I think that the board isn't supportive of the staff or that knows that there is a need to make this happen. It's just, is this a smart move for the village to do at this time? So I just want staff to know that
Oh, yeah.
I'm down to get a new facility, but
I get it. I asked those
it's like
same
the
questions
worst
of them when the
time in
bids
30
came in.
years to be building a facility. It's just, it's tough.
Yep, yeah, I asked those same questions when it came in, and, you know, I know there's a need, you know, Todd said he thinks we'd be waiting a long time for the bids to come back where those would be, and in the meantime, other things are going up, labor and other things. You know, what we've tried to do is, the original budget, conceptual budget presented to you was basically that 15 million, and we're doing our best to make changes, whatever we need to do to keep it at that number, so that we're not trying to come to you and say, well, now, because of the volatility, it's a $16 million building.
Because the concern that I would have, Mark, is that, I mean, I've been through your building and I appreciate going through it and the need that is there. What I hear is that so much has been scaled back, cut back, things that would improve the day-to-day quality of the employees there and what you need and what you deserve. Is it worth to go through and put up a shell now at this time and not have any of the things that you need? Or drag our feet until you get what you want and should have as a department?
So one comment that I'd like to make is that through the process of looking at these items that we've deemed as alternates, one of the things that we took into account was we wanted to identify items that could be added at a later date that had no impact on any other infrastructure that would be coordinated with the building. So when we talk about the catwalks, one being eliminated in the wash bay section, that's something that could be added at a 2-year mark, a 5-year mark, at a 10-year mark, where there's no additional equipment or additional infrastructure that would have to be incorporated at that time. I will tell you there is one item that we've identified that if we identify to cut that item, it's cut. If it doesn't go in as new construction, it would not be included or an additional item to be added into the building later. That would be the bridge crane that was incorporated into the fleet mechanics area. That's the only item. So that was one of the key things that staff that we did through the process were, what are, I don't want to say easy items to put aside, but items that can be potentially added later at either no additional cost or just the cost of markup through the point of time. So that was one of our key things we wanted to look at.
I don't want to speak for Marlon, he can honestly speak for himself. You know, I think he tried to take out things that they're still getting what they need in the building. There are some things that would be nice to have that maybe now they have to wait on, but I still think it'll function the way he needs and wants, so.
And I, you know, again, to talk about on a day-to-day operation level, you know, again, when you get a new facility in the crosshairs, obviously, you start to increase your thought process of how that's going to be. But I can tell you that it has been years that we have constantly had conversations to the point where it's day in, day out about the need for a new facility. The village does a awesome job. The village board does a great job of supporting Public Works with quality equipment and vehicles. The reality is all of those vehicles and equipment, and I shouldn't say all, but a vast majority of those vehicles and equipment are stored outdoors, which reduces the lifespan of those vehicles and increases the amount of maintenance and wear and tear on those vehicles. The other issue that we've run into as of lately is the need for a Vector truck, a hydro excavating sewer jetting truck. We don't have the capability with our current facility to be able to accommodate that. We are starting to see major issues with our response time from the Julie Locate Company. And those are specific instances where we could utilize that piece of equipment and substantially reduce our labor times because we won't have to wait for those utility locates because of the nature of that piece of equipment. So those are a lot of the things that we're trying to look at too through this process. Keep in mind too that we're also scattered throughout multiple different facilities as far as storage goes, and we're paying on a monthly basis for an additional storage unit that we've had now for, I think, roughly about 4 years. So that's money that we're continuing to increase. I will tell you too that if we prolong this any farther out than within probably the next 6 to 8 months, we'll probably have to look at renting an additional facility that's either larger and subsequently get rid of the current facility we're renting, or an additional square footage to cover the needs of the department. So that's the other thing that we're 100% with you, that we don't want to push forward a project just to push forward a project and end up with a building that's just a shell. But we're identifying the key things that we need and not hindering ourselves too much to where we can't add those items back at a later date.
Part of my issue, and Trustee Bauman touched on this, if Doug gives me $25,000 and says, Steve, go out and buy a car, and I take that $25,000 and I go out and I come back and I say, Doug, I didn't get one car, I got 2 cars, I got 2 Yugos. They're awesome, right? I didn't go out and get what we wanted. I'm settling for what we've got. And with the pricing, it's almost like, okay, well, we'll make this an alternate, we'll make this an alternate, we'll add that later. Well, if we add that later, it's still a cost that's gonna have to be covered later. It was a cost that was supposed to be covered by the sale of the bonds. And so we're just kicking that down the road. And to what you said, Mark, as far as the Julie locates, if Julie's not locating within 48 hours, by law, you can dig. If you hit it, it's their fault. They got to get out there and they got to dig. We're now all of a sudden we're saying, oh well, and I'm sure Julie's probably funded by the state and they mess up everything else. Why wouldn't they mess that up too? If they can't and don't get enough staff to go out and mark these things, hammer them. We shouldn't have to cover the cost for that. I'm going to be grouchy today.
Going to be?
Yeah.
So do we have a comparison in terms of what we have for an overage or potential, this cushion, if you will, compared to accelerating the lifespan of the equipment and those storage areas that we talked about? Do we have a comparison of the additional costs there versus what we're looking at in terms of overage on this project?
So we don't specifically have anything related to the vehicle reserve or replacement schedules, but that's something that we could definitely work to put together. The rental cost on the storage unit, again, I can't attest to what that is off the top of my head, but we can definitely get that for you.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, what is the pleasure of the board? What would you?
And I appreciate all of the work that everybody's done. And I know you guys have worked tirelessly on this. But based on these 3 bids, we're about $2.7 million into our $15 million project, and we're over budget by 4.5%. So we're not even close to being a third of the way in, and we're over 4.5% on the dollars.
Yeah, I looked at all the fixed costs that we have, because there's other fixed costs in this budget, that, and we're at 29% after these 3 and the other fixed costs we have. So we have 71% of the project remaining after this.
Yeah,
After-
so it feels like it's not, we're not gonna be 4.5% over. We're 4.5% now of the total. It's significant.
I don't disagree with you in the least, but
Yeah.
it is affected by the most volatile item the most.
When is concrete go to bid? Because I'm guessing that's another big ticket item, right?
Yeah, concrete, we're hoping for concrete, masonry, excavation site utilities for the month of August
To bid them.
to bid.
And right now, we just have, what, engineer estimates
We
as
have-
far as the cost of concrete?
We have our estimate, yeah. We self-perform concrete, so we have a very, very, very good handle on
Okay.
that.
What's the pleasure of the board in terms of these bids? Are we looking for additional information in terms of the potential losses versus our overage? What would you like to do?
If we want to keep the project moving as it is, we would ask the board to accept the bids tonight. The steel especially, I think it's,
It's good through the end of the week.
so,
The contracts that they sign, I'm assuming all material and labor escalation costs are going to be included.
They cannot go back for additional funds if we sign them up right away.
It makes me wonder how padded the numbers are for steel, because you don't know what they're going to do in the next 3 or 4 months, so.
if the board does not want to go forward at this point and wants to rebid it at a later date, whenever that would be, then you would reject the bids tonight.
This tonight, and our costs keep escalating on, like the concrete and other things, and we decide to cancel these contracts, the only thing we have to pay is the engineering for the steel and the precast, which has no shelf life.
Yeah, the precast wall panels is 48,000, the steel is 13,000, and the plank was 15,000, so roughly 70.
So you got about $76,000 that if you cancel contracts, you have absolutely nothing to show for.
Well, you have the engineering,
have the
so that when
shop
you go to
rents.
bid it later, you don't have to do the engineering again. You have the engineering, you set the engineering on the shelf. We did that in a water plant several times where we would go forward with projects, we didn't have the funding, we would engineer them, and they would be what we called shelf-ready then. And then when costs came down or when funding became available, we were in a position to jump on it. And I mean, that worked out well years ago when there was some grant money available. Because I would hate to not go forward with it and not lock the pricing in, and then down the road, we're even paying more, where at least we can get the engineering done, and if the prices do go up, or on other items that we're bidding, and we have to cancel this, we just put the engineering on the shelf, and then when we get ready to do it again, that portion of the project's done. The engineering's not gonna expire per se. And that'll just go up in cost too down the road. What we're paying for engineering today, a year or two from now would be a lot more.
I'm in support of moving forward with the bids, because like trustee Guyer mentioned, we then at least have something on the shelf. We're, like we do with roads, like Route 30, right? It's phase 1 ready. When funding becomes available, it's ready to go. Without that, you're starting from scratch again, and we start the process and the bids take longer. And again, this building is well more than 10 years overdue. Am I correct? I mean, it's
And then
well over
some.
10 years overdue.
Needed it
And as much as
22
it
years
pains
ago.
me, and I don't want to spend money frivolously, I don't see it changing. I've had 2 paper price increases in my industry in the last 6 months. It's unheard of. It hasn't gone up once in 2 years. We've had 2 in 3 months. In 6 months, we've had 2 of them every 3 months. So, and we don't see an end in sight. So I just think we need to be prudent and move forward so that, worst case scenario, we have an exit strategy. we have them on the shelf.
Any other comments, discussion?
No, I'm in favor of moving forward as well. I would think in the future, I'd probably be looking for the information in a little bit different format. I got to tell you, I was kind of surprised to sit down and, I didn't go back and look at what the original estimate were when I got the agenda and go through and do the math. I should have, my fault. But to sit down and, oh, it's 600 over, surprise, at the meeting's not received well, quite frankly, by me.
Just to elaborate on that, whenever I've seen bids come through in other board activities, the attachment was there as these were the bids that came in. This was as what we termed the lowest responsible bid, but that was the budget amount we saw where everything laid out, as well as this is the bid with alternates as well. So there are no catches. And the bond sale that occurred, that was for 15 million even, the exact cost of the project?
Yes, we issued 15 million in debt. As you will hear, the bond market was favorable, so the cash we're getting from that is about 15.9 million.
That includes,
And what-
does that include the
Yeah.
1.5?
For the buy down, right?
No, that's,
That excludes that amount.
the refunding
Okay.
is separate, but,
Okay.
so there was about a $940,000 bond premium.
Would you like a motion for
Yes, I would entertain a motion.
C, award of contract for bid 3.41? So moved.
Second.
Take the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
In regards to item D, award of contract for bid package 3.47 for precast wall panels to Stonecast Products, Inc. in the amount of $1,173,429. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Take the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
In regard to item E, award of contract for bid package number 5.00 for structural steel for the new Public Works facility to Garb Iron Works, Inc. in the amount of $1,322,000. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Take the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item F, ordinance 1917, supplemental ordinance providing for the issuance of general obligation alternate bonds for the Village of Montgomery for the purpose of financing a new public works facility and the refunding outstanding alternate bonds of the village. This is a waiver, first passage on the second. Is it going to you or to Justin?
If I can, I do
Yes.
have the finalized ordinance that I'm going to hand out to the board right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Big print, I like it.
Yeah, it is.
Appreciate that. Do you want me to share?
No, I just, okay.
So, as Jeff mentioned, gotta find my documents here. As Jeff mentioned, we did have actually a very good turnout with the bonds. The bond underwriter, the bond underwriters bid on the bonds, Anthony Muselli from Spear Financial is with us tonight. He has been estimating the true interest cost at 2.04%. Our bid actually came in at 1.84%, so 20 basis points or 0.2% lower than what we've been looking at. And that is for 20-year bonds. Some of the bonds are 20 years. What the underwriters look at is they look at the market, how much they can sell the bonds for at a particular rate. So, for example, if you look at the rate on the bonds, range from anywhere from 2% to 5%. You cannot get that right now, so basically what they do is they offer us a premium for those bonds because of that higher interest rate. For the new money for the Public Works building, there's a par amount of $15 million. So, as we said, $15 million is what we had told the board we were going to do. The premium was $1,230,000. There's roughly $275,000 of issuance costs that we have to pay up front. And then, as Jeff said, the money left to put into the project fund is $15,950,000. So we also looked at the refunding, and we actually changed what we were going to do with the refunding. We were going to refund 21, 22, 23, and 24 bonds. We actually did not refund the 21 bonds. We planned on paying for those this year anyways. What that does is it actually decreases our payments over the long term from roughly $1,270,000 to $1,230,000 over that time frame. I'll turn it over to Anthony. He can talk a little bit more about the market itself and how we did today.
Sure. Thank you, Justin. So as Justin had mentioned, we had the competitive sale for the bonds today that went very well. We ended up receiving a total of 29 bids from 6 bidders through an open auction process. The winning bidder was the Baker Group, is the name of the underwriting firm. The original bid came in at a 1.8378% true interest cost, which is essentially just an average interest rate. We resized the issue after the sale. In resizing the issue, we kept the new money portion at $15 million as discussed. And as Justin had mentioned, we did not refund a portion of the 21 maturity on the 2011 bonds. The reason for that is that is a payment you were already going to make. It wasn't necessarily economical to refund it all, but we had it in the original plan just in case the cost of the borrowing were to have gone up in order to keep your overall payment at around that $1.2 million level. We would have needed to refund more of that 21 maturity. We didn't have to do that. We only refunded what was economical. So of the 6 bidders that came in, the bids ranged from the winning bid of 1.83, almost 1.84 rounded, to a high bid of 1.938. So they were relatively tight all through where we had been estimating, even all the way back until last year when we were looking at this. We were in the kind of low 2s for the estimated cost, so we're still well under that. Again, the final project deposit will be $15,951,216. That's net of all cost of issuance. And this will refund a portion of the 21 and the 2022 through 24 maturities of the 2011 bonds. That resulted in present value savings of approximately $58,000, worth 3.9% of refunded principal. The bonds will go on to close on June 29th, so that is when funds will be deposited into the account.
What would the balance be on the 2011 bonds outstanding?
After the refunding?
Yeah. Thank you.
I have that. Give me 1 second. After the refunding, we will have $225,000 due in '21 in principal amount.
Thank you.
Welcome.
If there's any other questions from the board at this time, myself or Anthony, either one of us will be able to answer those.
Anything else? If there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Take the roll, please.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
Trustee Bauman,
Yes.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes?
Trustee Youngerman, Trustee Marisak, and Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. The one thing I we didn't mention with that is the 15,950 that's now going into the project budget. Decision's not being made tonight, but it has two uses. It can go into the project, into the building, or we can use it to refund some of the debt service that we issued. So just so you know, going forward.
Let's erase the
So,
it's 15.9 budget from anybody's thought process. Let's just not
Yeah.
plan that we have 15.9 in the budget now.
well, that's,
We started at 13,
No,
we went to
we're-
15.
we've been bringing you, I mean, because we
I
knew
feel like I'm
that,
walking through the store with my wife.
we knew that tonight, we knew we were getting 15,950, and we still brought you cuts to bring it down to
Good.
the number that we've been telling you, so. I just wanted you to know it can't be used for any other purpose besides those two,
Perfect.
so.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is item G, acceptance of easement for Pearl Street Storm Sewer Project. Director Wolf?
Thank you, Trustee Spurling. So this is a easement acceptance in front of the board for the Pearl Street Drainage Improvement Project that's taking place currently, or is about to begin, I should say. This is basically an open ditch that's in disrepair on the corner lot of Madison Street and Pearl Street in the village. This is basically just a cleanup item to allow the contractor not only for permanent easement for the village, but also construction easement during the course of the project. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Director Wolf? No, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved?
Second?
Take the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak,
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger,
Yes.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
Trustee Bauman,
Yes.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes?
and Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to item H, ordinance 1919, temporarily closing a village street, Mayfield Drive. This is waiver of first, passage on the second reading. Attorney Julian.
Yes, thank you. And everyone should be very familiar with this item by now. But this is the temporary closure portion for Mayfield Drive. So this, of course, will not be the final action. You will see this item again. But the purpose of this is to be able to start the enforcement actions, kind of do a little trial and error to make sure that what the board has directed is working, to make any tweaks as necessary before this becomes permanent. However, it is our intention that what is here tonight hopefully works, and we won't have to do that. But we do have that flexibility, built in, that we can revisit it before we make this a final road closure. I did want to ask the board, make this subject to attorney review to tweak the section where you'll see there's a comment with regard to the vehicles. And in further discussions with engineering and public works, I can tell you what our proposed list is, and then I would, of course, like the board to direct me if that is or it is not your intention. But we had it down to fire and ambulance vehicles or emergency vehicles, police vehicles, the village's public work vehicles, United States Postal Service, school buses, and then village contracting waste providers. We wanted to make sure that mail or delivery wasn't so large that that would include Amazon or UPS or anyone else. And then likewise with waste haulers, we don't want that to be discretionary where someone comes by with a pickup truck on trash day and, they're a waste provider. So that was how we were going to propose that the sign be, and then I would have those vehicles enumerated in the ordinance where I have that kind of placeholder right now. But otherwise, if that is not what the board intended, or if you want to limit it further, please just let me know and we can make that adjustment.
So-
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just real quick, on the vehicles, so that does bring up an interesting question. Like an Amazon truck, a large Amazon truck, let's say he has a delivery to this gentleman's house who spoke tonight. So how does he turn around and get back? Or if he has a delivery to his neighbor's house, he's got to go, 4 or 5 houses back to get turned around.
I'm sure they deliver to dead-end streets, so.
I'm just saying, where's he turn around?
That's not my problem.
There are
Okay.
similar streets
I'm
within the
just saying.
village where this problem exists. There are similar streets in the village where this problem currently exists. Marble Farm is one of those, at the end of Ivy, where there's a long dead end, which postal services and different package companies have to obviously address that. Again, this is where the education, is going to take place, whereas through time, people identify this closure, they'll have to identify, routes to be able to work around that area.
Yeah, and just as a practical standpoint, I would advise starting with a more restrictive list and expanding versus starting with a larger list and then trying to take it away. I think in the initial days, you'll see pretty quickly what's working and what's not, and whether or not you want to expand that to include something larger. But I think once you open that door and you name somebody, it's going to be a lot harder on the permanent closure to restrict it further.
I would eliminate, personally, I'd eliminate US Postal Service, school buses, and trash collection. They can figure out new routes. If it's not a life safety issue, you don't need to go through there.
Well, my understanding previously is that the school district had, and I'm not sure, I had not communicated with the school district, but I think the school district had been part of the discussions, and that was part of the agreement. I'm not sure on that, but I think they had been looped in, the Postal Service. I don't think that there's been any communication with.
Yeah, but I didn't like it then, so.
On the garbage trucks, what's he gonna do, back up the road? I can tell you, and I've plowed down Marble Farm before, in a plow truck, which is as large as a garbage truck. It's hairy backing up in a residential area to get out of a dead-end situation.
And we're trying to, the goal of this board and the residents is the safety of the residents in the neighborhood. And the last thing we want is a large vehicle like that backing up where they don't have good visual or turning around in Rob's driveway. He's okay with it if it's not every week. But I mean, in all seriousness, I think it's a safety issue as well, like you said, Trustee Guyer, that, to back a big vehicle like that up around that bend would not be safe. So I think letting those parcels go through, I don't think that that's such a big concern.
Yeah, quite frankly, I haven't ever heard of a concern of garbage truck, mail carrier, school bus on Mayfield. So to allow those uses.
And those
I'm
are
okay with.
services that are, fairly critical to everyday life, so I would be okay with them being able to pass through there.
And Chief, we're gonna educate through enforcement, correct?
No, we're going to educate through signage first. Enforcement is one of our last options when it comes to writing a citation. We're going to do a campaign to let the community and neighborhood know that this road is going to be closed. If they violate that closure, then we'll take enforcement action and write a citation.
And yeah, that, we'll put signage up, we can get it out and however we want, but if they go through there, there is no, we'll let you off with the warning, have a nice day, is there?
No, we've already agreed to some $0 for that.
Okay. That's what I meant by enforcement. Thank you.
One of the other things I had brought up at, I believe it was the last meeting, or it could have been the meeting before, was notifying the public. because we've had these conversations. They've been very public conversations, but as we saw this evening, things can happen and people don't realize it's happening. We have people in that subdivision that I am sure do not realize this is coming. I get it. I know trustee Youngerman said at that time when I brought it up, well, they didn't vote. Well, they probably just ignored what came in the mail from the village, and yes, that's on them. But at the same time, I don't want to see somebody crashing into a barrier or trying to come to a screeching halt because they're not paying attention. So I would like to see us do some type of outreach again.
I mean, we will be putting up the digital message boards 2 weeks before it's installed, letting everybody know. There will be signage, installed saying no outlet or whatever it is, and then at the thing saying only authorized vehicles. We will be putting it on our website and social media, and all the households in that area will be getting a letter.
Okay. So we will be easing them into this is coming. This will be happening on X
So I
date.
get the letter to the Mayfield and Saratoga Springs, is that it? Subdivisions. What about Blackberry Crossing, Blackberry West, Lakewood Creek West? The people that are the guilty cut-throughers?
I mean,
It would really behoove us to spend those couple of dollars to educate those folks, since they seem to have been part of the problem.
I think our hope was if we have the signage up there,
It will
the
help.
digital message
Yeah.
board 2 weeks ahead of time, if they're cutting through, they're gonna see that every day and.
And as far as the voting piece and some people not voting, it's their right to not vote,
Absolutely.
You can't force them to vote.
Absolutely. Any other discussion?
There was one other question I had. I don't know if we discussed this before, if I just thought of this or was thinking of this on my own, but we have in here that it's going to be a partial road closure until such time as the village board authorizes a permanent road closure. Were we going to do a sunset clause or a date certain? Were we going to say within a certain amount of time, we want to have the study done? And as part of the study, when we close the road, is it our intent that we're going to have a device on either end of Mayfield Drive to immediately start taking traffic counts and speed counts so we know the impact and we can see the impact that the closure has?
I thought one of the conversations was related to that time frame. Originally, somebody had said something about 3 months or something, but we really almost need to cycle into the school year.
Correct.
Because that is a whole different traffic pattern, and actually, if you're looking for comparative data, that's when that traffic study was done. So we kind of need to get off of the 3 months. And again, don't misunderstand. This is temporary until such time as we say it's permanent. We're not moving them. They're not movable barricades. Nobody's going to be able to slide them out of the way. They're there until Director Wolf comes by with a truck and a crane and lifts it up and moves it. So they are permanent. As soon as we say they're permanent, or as soon as we say they're temporary, they're not going anywhere. It's just if we need to tweak something, we haven't poured concrete on the roadway.
Correct.
And then have to jackhammer it up. So I think the sunset clause thing needs to be longer, 6, 8 months.
I mean, that's why we didn't
Before
set
we vote
one.
to-
I would think through the end of the year, you get to see the fall school year start up, you get to see any potential weather early in the early winter season. But by November, December, we should know if this is going to be permanent or not permanent. But before then, we might not have all the information we need. So I would think through the temporary, through the end of the year, at a sunset, at a maximum, before we need to come back and actually make a decision on the finality of this.
Okay.
As far as the data collection goes, I believe the initial thought process was that we wanted to give the closure a few weeks so we weren't getting false data with the traffic collectors. So the plan is that we're going to put collectors on each side of the closure, but we don't want to get that false data where we still have people coming in and then turning around. So basically giving us an inaccurate count on cars. So we're going to wait probably 2 to 3 weeks after the closure is implemented, and then the counters will go up to start collecting that data.
Okay. And then you would have them like at close to Concord on the one end?
I don't know
To
that.
capture people coming out of the neighborhood?
Yeah, I don't know that we've identified the exact location yet, but we'll definitely
Okay,
take
yeah,
that into
because I'd
consideration.
almost like the data immediately just to see
Right.
if we have a lot of people that are going down and turning around and coming out, kind of give us an idea of how well, our our campaign worked as far as telling everybody about the road, and how many people are actually obeying the signage and stuff, because, I mean, if our counts are, day one, I'll just say 1,000 on each end, and day 30, they're at 1,000, well, then we know that, the
That was
process worked.
my thinking as well, is to start the count right away so that we are capturing the data of the cars that have to turn around to go out and go back around. So that hopefully we are seeing a huge decline after X number of days. I think that would be expected.
And then I just have one more question also.
Of course.
I don't know if you've actually determined the exact location, but as I was driving through there the other day, I noticed that in the general area, there's a fire hydrant. This is not going to affect the access to that fire hydrant where we're going to put this?
No, we've identified we're going to be roughly about 5 to 6 feet away from the fire hydrant with the closure, so should be adequate room for the fire district to be able to hook up.
Okay, perfect. That's all I have.
That's all I have? Okay. Any other questions or discussion on this item? All right, I will entertain a motion that is subject to attorney review, please.
So moved.
Second?
Take the roll, please. Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling? Yes. Thank you. All right, moving on to items for discussion. We have a liquor license request from El Costeno at 702 Montgomery Road. Attorney, I just made you an attorney. Administrator
thank you.
Zoffel.
Thank you. This item came to you last time, but we did not have the petitioner here. She is here this evening, so she can answer any of your questions. If you remember, they already have a liquor license for the restaurant. They are looking for a liquor license for package sales to basically turn a portion of the place into a liquor store, I guess I would say. Is that the intent?
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, due to this COVID and the closures that we had, it really put a strain on our business, and in reality, we are hanging on by a thread. We would obviously like to contribute to helping, establish our finances, and we were just like excavating to find ideas. And you guys, I'm sure, are familiar. This used to be the old Bill's restaurant. So the demographics of the area have changed drastically. So now it's like they used to be a lot of seniors. When we first came into the building almost 6 years ago, we had a lot of seniors stopping by. But unfortunately, it's not the food that they eat. We are predominantly more like seafood now. So during the week, we have a very slow flow of customers coming through. So we are trying to obviously find something to kind of keep us balanced. We do have the slot machines, which in reality have really helped. But we need to find something. We are not utilizing the whole entire building because Bill's was huge. It's a gigantic, it's enormous. The kitchen is like, we're only using in reality like maybe half of the kitchen, so half of the building, like the whole carryout. I just can't imagine how powerful this restaurant was. They have its own entrance to the carryout, which is huge, and that's not being utilized. So we were throwing ideas out there. Don't know if this is even a possibility, but we would like to see if that would be, even a possibility to be able to obtain this license to survive.
And what would be is it beer and wine that you're looking to sell, or?
Any package, even if it was like whatever, bottled tequila, stuff like that. Just like a mini liquor store.
Could be a full liquor store.
Yeah, like, let's say a mini liquor store. And if possible, to be able to sell like the lottery tickets, if that would be okay.
One thing I really didn't enjoy much this past year, but a benefit that some other restaurants were doing, like a Olive Garden, for instance, when you ordered your meal for carryout, you actually had the mixes for beverages to go. So it was a bottle of wine and it was the sangria mix, and that's what they sold as part of the dinner. That I enjoyed as a customer, as a consumer, and I appreciate and would do that. I really hesitate about having a full-blown liquor store, though. I would support selling it as part of a carry-out option, but just as a place to go get a fifth of something, I don't know if I'm on board with that
Okay, no,
concept.
And that's good, get feedback, and maybe, like I said, these are just ideas that we were throwing out there just to try to survive. So, I totally understand, and I'm welcome to any type of suggestion so that we can move forward with it, and everybody be content, obviously, and keeping also our neighbors happy as well.
Yeah, so if it was in, I see the support in it as an accompaniment to the dinner that's being
Right.
carried out, to add an additional sale to the meal.
Right.
That's something I could see and I would take advantage of.
Margaritas to go.
Yeah,
That
for
type
2
of
or
thing.
4 of them that are part of a
Yeah,
carry-out
picture
order.
margaritas on wheels.
But just as another option for somebody to walk and to purchase liquor, I don't know if I could support that, or is there no other liquor option in the neighborhood? But there is there not?
There's a liquor store down the street, right next to the pizzeria. I can't think of the pizzeria's name. It's right down, across from Phillips Park, yeah. But that would be also an option, just to be able to do that. We would be happy just to.
I agree 100% with what Trustee Bauman said.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little weird if I could go in and sit down and have a dinner and then grab a bottle of tequila on my way home. If it's a packaged thing as part of something that I'm coming to pick up, a bottle of wine or some beers or something, yeah, absolutely,
Right,
no
but
problem.
our establishment has 2 different entrances. The entrance you would not be sharing the same entrance. There's-
Right, I get
right,
that. But if I go to your establishment, I can sit down, I can have a beer, I
Right.
can have a bottle of wine.
Yes,
And I think during COVID, we were kind of, I think we created a new ordinance or a new liquor license that allowed packaged to be sold with.
well, then that would be
Yeah,
something that I would be
and that,
happy
I
with.
think,
Yeah.
at least for me, I have no problem with that at all. I
See
would
something
support
like that, what I would
100%.
even be happy with.
As far as it becoming a liquor store, I'm a hard no.
Okay.
Like,
That's good to know.
because that's what it sounds like you're trying to do is
Yep.
have the restaurant and then use this unutilized space to open a liquor store. And I think what I'm hearing from everybody, if I'm not mistaken, is that that's a no.
That's a no, yeah.
That's a no.
No, absolutely, and like I
And-
said,
but
these
the
are just
packaged
ideas
idea-
trying to survive, thinking of, well, what can we do, just random thoughts, but, as we said, obviously, there's a purpose why we're all gathered here tonight, and have the ideas and come to a reasonable agreement here, so I'm very happy.
So Attorney Julian, then, is that something they can do with their current license, is sell the packaged as part of a dinner?
The emergency portion of it, the state authorized last year's expired, but I believe that they have now put in a more permanent, similar type license. So we would have to go and revisit and see exactly what those parameters are, and then mirror it in the code. Because when the village had adopted was temporary.
We just hold the code, the Class G.
So it's just going through the motions of adopting the new state? Okay.
More
Okay.
permanent.
Yeah, and I would be in favor of that, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank
Sounds
you.
sounds like we're much more in favor of that.
Yes,
than-
that sounds good. It works. Anything works. Nowadays, like I said, I thought I was alone, but when you start hearing everybody else speak about like cost of goods sold, and how expensive everything is getting, it's like, I'm not the only one in this boat.
No, and
So
we
thank
we
you.
appreciate
Thank
that you're there and that you have that business, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. We are moving on to the next item for discussion is the revisions to the employee manual. Our HR manager, Megan Ostrego. Ostrego, excuse me, Ostrego.
Ostrego, thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. All right. So the memo that was provided to you outlined some of the basic changes that we are proposing in the revision to the employee manual. The current manual that we have in place was last approved in February of 2015, so it's a few years old. A lot of the changes that we're proposing are more of additions to incorporate some state and federal employment laws that were either not included in detail in the 2015 manual or have had changes in that last 6 years, which obviously we've implemented those in practice, but we really want them in the manual to be a resource to employees. So if they have questions on something, they can go to the manual, just look it up and do a little research for themselves before coming to me with questions, which they, of course, are always welcome to do. Couple of the policies that were previously approved by the board, but not incorporated into one manual, include the travel and expense reimbursement policy, which was actually approved in 2016, and the policy prohibiting sexual harassment, which was approved by the board in 2020. There is also a much more detailed drug-free workplace policy. The policy in the old manual covered maybe about 2.5 pages. This just expands it with much more detail. It also addresses use of cannabis, which is obviously now legal in Illinois, but certain employees are still prohibited from using it, including our public works employees who are required to have CDLs and undergo federal drug testing under the DOT. So obviously it's not legalized federally, and then our public safety police officers are also prohibited from having that in their system. There's a list of other changes that are listed here. I won't go through them all. Two of the bigger changes that affect employees is the policy for compensatory leave, which is in Chapter 6-6, beginning on page 71 of the revised manual. So the current manual has no limitation on the amount of comp time employees can accrue. When we approved the last MAP union contract for our police officers last year, we did include a limit on the amount of comp time that they could accrue at 80 hours per year, and then it gets paid out to them at the end of the year. And we're proposing that same limitation on our non-union employees who are eligible to earn comp time as well. The other one is the sick leave payout at termination. Currently, employees, if they leave for any reason other than involuntary termination for misconduct, they can get paid out for up to 320 hours of sick leave that they have accrued in their sick bank. We're proposing to limit that payout to existing employees only hired before May 1st. They would continue to have that available to them. That's what they signed on to, so we don't want to take that away. But any employees hired after May 1st, 2021 would only be eligible for that sick leave payout upon retirement from the village. Assuming this gets approved, we will do some training with employees, make sure they're familiar with all the changes that we're proposing. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question on the holidays. I thought Illinois moved Juneteenth and November, Election Day, November 3rd typically, to holidays for the next 2 years. Is that correct? Or am I?
Juneteenth?
Juneteenth.
Under the state of Illinois.
Correct.
Well, we don't have the same exact state schedule. We're missing Columbus Day, for example.
That was more for board discussion, but then
Yeah.
Election Day as well, November 3rd typically.
Martin Luther King Day is one
Correct.
that's not on our list.
I just don't know if there had been any discussion on including those as part of the holiday package for the village that the village would observe or not, or if staff took up any of those 2 dates
I'm sure
specifically under
employees would
discussion.
definitely be open to having a
I'm
couple more
sure they
holidays on there.
would. It was just
Thanks,
more
Tom.
of a question of if staff has had that conversation,
We did
not
not
had that
look at changing-
conversation. Okay.
We did not look at the addition of any holidays. We didn't have that discussion.
Employees get paid time off on election day to vote, correct? Isn't that what the manual says, is it 2 hours? They can take up to 2 hours on election day to go vote?
Yeah, it kind of goes along with if their shift starts, I believe it's if their shift starts or ends less than 2 hours before the window for voting closes. You know, we have to allow them time off to vote if they can't do it outside of working hours.
I have a question, and did you tell her we talked?
I did.
Okay.
I was going to bring it up because you told me to bring it up.
I spoke with Jeff earlier, and Trustee Guyer had sent me a couple texts and some questions, so I asked Jeff earlier today. One of them was on the social media policy 4B. I understand that now that I've read it a couple more times. It says any information, picture, or posting that would identify the user even anonymously as an employee or public official of the village, so they would need our permission essentially to post a picture of us, right? If it was an employee. I understand that. And the other one is number 2 of the social media policy, and I agree with it 100%. But my only issue with it says employees and public officials shall not use social media in any way that brings discredit to the village or any of its members, employees, or public officials, or promote misconduct on or off duty. The spreading of gossip, rumor, and innuendo specifically brings discredit to the village. I agree with that 100%. The only thing that I disagree with is we shouldn't have public officials in there because we're not employees of the village.
Yeah, we are. We absolutely are employees of the village.
You think we're employees of the village?
You get a paycheck?
Laura says you're not.
You get a paycheck.
Sure. So when you look in the state statutes, they do distinguish between elected official and employee of the village. So there is a distinction between them. However, I'll also answer your question. There's certain policies that are standalone policies that are also incorporated in the handbook. So they're all in one place for the employees. But for example, the sexual harassment policy applies to both elected officials and employees, and that's required by state statute. You know, rather than having one policy drafted separately for employees and then, you know, just changing out the words to say elected officials, there's a single policy that's its own standalone policy, but it's also incorporated in the employee handbook, you know, for ease of employees to have it at one place. You know, we certainly could create 2 separate policies. It just seemed more economical to have a single policy.
Is this just for efficiency and streamlining purposes?
Correct, but it doesn't mean the
Okay.
whole employee
Otherwise,
handbook
we just create a
applies.
separate board policy that just talked about you guys.
But yeah,
So
we
it's
just
easier to
incorporate those
incorporate
into the
it.
handbook rather than having, you know, 2 separate sexual harassment policies when it's essentially the same.
Okay.
But elected officials are not employees.
Well, not for purposes, yes, they're not employees. There's certain other, you know, duties and responsibilities elected officials have that are similar to employees, but they're not an employee for the purpose of the employee handbook. And most state statutes do, you know, the employee ethics, or the State Officials Employee Ethics Act, you know, distinguishes between an employee and an elected official with regard to things that can or cannot be done. So there is a distinction, even though there is some overlap between them.
Okay.
Question for you before you go. Same section, same subsection, employees and officials, social media, discredit to the village, its members, gossip, rumors, innuendo. Those are awfully subjective terms. How in the world is that actually adjudicated? How does that happen? I follow the cases on the social media stuff too, and it's all over the place, and that seems to be kind of, how do you enforce that, and who enforces such things?
Yeah, I would defer to staff on that as to how, you know, they actually practically enforce it from, you know, a legal standpoint. I think it's just a very case-by-case basis, and you'd get a situation and you'd look at, okay, what, you know, has similar cases come down to this? How have courts reacted to this? You kind of take that particular instance and try to see what the more global perspective is. It's almost impossible, as you mentioned, to anticipate it because even different jurisdictions, different circuits will have very different rulings on the same type of case. So I think it's one of those areas that it's important to have rules on, but the actual enforcement of it, you have to look very carefully, you know, and be very thorough before you take any action.
It's a gray area and it's intended to be gray.
Correct.
Well, I think If you mess up, the voters pretty much tell you. Yeah, that it solves.
Or they make you wear an orange shirt to a meeting.
So I do have a couple of things also. And a few years back, I talked to Jeff about this, under hours of work. It addresses flexible hours, compressed work week. However, unless I've missed it, I don't see anywhere where the manual addresses work from home. And this goes back to pre-COVID. I know we had quite a few people working at home because of COVID, but even pre-COVID, people were working at home. Why is that not addressed in here with the, what's the requirements to work from home? What do you have to do? Another portion here says an employee shall report promptly at the designated starting time, expected to devote all efforts during working hours to assigned duties. I mean, how does that play into working from home?
We can look at some, certainly language and
Okay. And
Working
then
from home.
one other thing that you and I had talked about previous, and I'm probably the only one that has this desire, but just because it was different years ago, and this was changed probably 15 years ago, but in the problem resolution process, at the very end, it says the decision of the village administrator is final, and I get that in most cases, but there are certain cases where it may be nice to have, and I have an example, but I don't have to go into it, where it'd be nice to have in the past, it was the village president or a committee, because quite honestly, if you're going to take some type of action against an employee, typically the supervisors talk to the department head has talked to HR, they've probably talked to you, and it's pretty much agreed that, yeah, this needs to be taken, or this action needs to be taken. The employees have nowhere to go. And I just think it was always nice when it previously was the village president, and it didn't happen often, but there were occurrences where, the village administrator was just maybe having a bad day, and the employee took it one step further. And then it was reviewed and the decision overturned.
Well, I think
Again, that's
employees
my
do have
personal opinion.
recourse. There's state offices and federal offices that
Well,
are
I get
designed to
that.
protect employees.
So-
At some point, there has to be somebody
All
who
right.
decides.
So I'll give you the example. I'm not going to go into it, but, and it's not a long example. So years ago, there was an employee that had done something extraordinary, and back then there was a step process. It wasn't arranged like now, there were actual steps. And the department head went to the village administrator and said, listen, this guy, I want to give him an interim step increase because he did such a great thing that he deserves a step increase. And the village administrator said, he does. And then the department head said, but when it comes time for his annual review, I want to also give him an annual review. Absolutely. Well, he got the interim step increase. The annual review came. The village administrator said, you know what, I changed my mind. So the employee filed through the process and went all the way up to the village administrator, and the village administrator says, I don't deny that I agreed to all that. It's just that I've changed my mind. I don't care that I made a commitment to an employee, I've changed my mind. Well, the employee took it to the village president, and the village president said, no, this is what the village employee was told. The village made a commitment to this employee. We're going to honor that commitment. And the whole time I worked for the village, that's the only time I ever knew under that system that happened. So I'm not saying, if somebody is disciplined for whatever reason, and I get that, your example, but there could be a time, and honestly, employees are discouraged from going beyond the administrator to trustees with any issues. But I can tell you, employees feel like they just have a dead end when it comes to that. And again, I know I'm probably the only one that looks at it that way, and that's fine. I just want to put that out there, that I think that would be something to add. And having said that, this is under items for discussion. Or at some point in time in the future, are we going to actually vote on this?
Yes.
So there was one other thing that I saw, and I'm not picking on you tonight, Jeff, but
That's why we
you
brought
know,
it here.
we're going through this and we're gonna vote on it, but under revisions to manual, it says, new policies may be enacted and these existing policies may be amended or rescinded at the sole discretion of the village administrator. So we can vote on this, and tomorrow Jeff can say, I'm changing it.
Well, but also we can vote tomorrow and say we're changing the village administrator too.
Well, I get
mean,
that, but I get that, I'm just saying.
Not that you're in jeopardy or anything, Jeff, but I'm just kind of.
I just want to
I
point it out.
understand exactly what Dan's point is, because if it's coming to the board to be reviewed and take our time to go through it and approve it, and this is the new document, right? This is the new one. How do you get to change it without us being involved in the decision to change it?
I mean, like, changes have been made in the meantime. When new state or federal laws have come through, we put those into practice. I mean, so
Yeah.
we've changed those. I can't name another policy for you that
you've changed.
that I've changed.
Yeah.
If you're going to change something, can you send us an email?
I
Or
can.
put
Weekly
it
updates?
in a
Yeah, the weekly-
weekly
I
note?
think
or-
in the course of day-to-day business, well, it's month to month or year to year. The administrator and staff have to have the ability to make minor modifications to the employee manual. You just have to be able to get business done as things happen. Significant changes or adjustment come before the board.
I
If
mean-
not, obviously, there's.
What's that mean? Steve's right. It's in my best interest not to be making major changes to the document without letting you know.
This, if I'm not
It's a good
mistaken,
point. Dan.
this-
It's a point well taken.
this
That's a legal
document is probably
document, so, yeah.
3 years in the making of
Oh, yeah.
subtle, minor changes, drug policy, all of that. You know, that stuff has all probably changed gradually over time, and then now it's time to periodically, let's get it updated and get it corrected and get it back before the board. So I agree, and, you know, as
Yeah.
long as that's the intent and everyone is clear, Administrator Zoffel, what the intent is.
My intention is not to fire you. I mean,
I just don't like the language, just because it's absolute, right? I mean,
Well, and I think this first page here with this disclaimer is really important because it says, "The policies, standards, and procedures contained in this manual are intended as general guidelines for village policies." So this manual is a guideline. You know, as we talked about with the social media policy, there is gray area because, you know, department heads and Jeff need that to be able to make decisions based on certain scenarios, but it also provides a document for consistency with how we're, you know, responding to different situations with employees as well. I can tell you one procedural change that we've made in the last couple of years that's now written into the manual was if there's an involuntary termination, there's going to be a police officer present in the building. That wasn't in writing before, but we started practicing that right after Pratt happened, and now it's in writing in the manual that if there's an involuntary termination, there'll be a police officer in the building when that's happening. So, so there have been, you know, minor tweaks throughout the years, and some of that we're just putting into writing now, so employees have that as a resource to refer to, so they know what's going on as well.
But be careful on the language, or at least I would like to hear it differently, because you preface by saying these are just guidelines. That's all they are, they're guidelines. But now we've written into those guidelines a policy. And I see policy and guidelines very differently. Policy is a policy. It's there, you're called out on it, this is what you have to do, versus a guideline which is just suggestive procedure.
I think there's probably a little of both in here. I mean, if you look at like a dress code policy versus, you know, sexual harassment, that's two very different things. I mean, we're going to take zero tolerance against
Right, so I mean,
harassment.
if it's in the manual, then it's policy. It's not just guidance that, yeah, we can. It's that, those are created because it's black and white.
Well, and I
To
think
keep,
that's-
to keep us safe and to keep the employees safe.
I think that's where, you know, like I mentioned, that there's some gray area in some of this, in some areas, for that. So that there's some, you know, because not every situation is black and white,
Right.
you know, in any management role. So I think that's where the guidance is there, so that the general direction is correct. How one department head may handle something may be different than someone else's, and they manage and know their people. Whereas if you say, this is it, everybody's exactly the same. We don't need all of them.
I would say it's probably Laura's job to turn the gray into black and white.
Correct.
And
Yes.
I mean, it's a point well taken, and I definitely think that area, the preamble can be tweaked a little, but also, it is put that way because there's certain things that maybe it's in the village's interest to not be as strict on, like with an employee discipline case, where it says this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, and maybe under the certain circumstances, the village doesn't feel like they want to go step 1, step 2, step 3, so they want to use more of the framework of it as like a guide versus going, okay, well, you didn't do this, so now the entire termination's out the window because you didn't progress that way. So, I think that is the intention. But again, when you want to use the employee handbook as a means, of course, you don't want to have to discipline employees, but, as a basis for discipline, you do want it to be clear that it's an expectation. So I think that we can tweak that language, but I think that is also why it is phrased the way that it is phrased, to allow for those sorts of circumstances too, and giving people the benefit of the doubt when warranted.
Any further questions or comments?
just a comment. Megan, thank you for getting this done. Much appreciated.
So
Did we give you enough feedback?
Thanks for sharing the microphone with Laura.
Yeah, of course.
We will look
I'm
at
happy to.
some work from home policy language and then bring that back, and then we would bring this document back for the board to officially approve.
Do you expect to have that back in 2 weeks, the 20th, our next meeting, or would it be later than that?
I don't know. Let's talk.
Okay,
We
at
could
a
probably do it
future
in two.
meeting, so this will come back at a future meeting, okay. All right, fantastic. All right. Moving on to new or unfinished business that is relevant to the village, please.
Just gonna say, we had our inaugural Street Eats Festival on Saturday. I saw some of you there. Saw you there quite a bit, I think. You too. Yeah. So I think it was very successful. The crowd was there pretty much right at 11. The crowd level stayed very steady. Some people left, new people came. We did get that about hour of downpour, which kind of cleared it out. And I was curious if that would wipe it out, but when the rain stopped, people came back right away.
Yeah.
And it stayed busy. Doug was there
I came
when it
back
ended.
at 6. I was here during the rain and I left, and I came back at 6. I actually texted Director Wolf and said, is it still on? Because at that moment, we were thinking it may get called because it was pretty bad. And he said, no, it's going on and people are here. And I came back down and it was jumping. I mean, it was like it was at 11:15 in the morning. So it was, when Jeff says it was successful, I think it was beyond successful. I really, and I think to Director Wolf's credit, this was a great kind of trial run for the fest a little bit. Layout was a little similar-ish with the food vendors up on the roadway there. And again, allowing some of the new Public Works guys to come in and work a smaller event instead of jumping right into the fest. And again, we talked about it during the event because it's changed the way we're going to lay out some of the food vendors and how we're going to avoid that trip hazard that we had.
Thank you.
Because we saw how successful this was and it worked, so.
And I thank Mark and his staff for being there the whole day, taking care of things. Also, I thank Mark, because until about 2 weeks beforehand, we had not contemplated having picnic tables, because we told people to bring their chairs and blankets, and he said, well, let's get a few. We got 20 tables, and next year I think we're going to do 40. So,
Yeah,
but
it was, and it was nice because there was a lot of people that were sitting at the tables, and I saw, staff was moving some tables into shaded areas. As shade became available, they would move some tables over and people could sit in the shade then. But people really enjoyed themselves and the food was fantastic. It really, I came 3 different times. My wife was none too pleased on Sunday morning.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
When she explained to me how much money I spent down at the Streets and Eats Festival.
That's very good.
I'm sorry I missed it. I had a family reunion in St. Louis and came back this morning, so, but I heard it was awesome.
Don't worry, I had your portion.
That was lunch.
Tom, while I'm looking that way, anything? Dan?
Vacation, June 23rd is the contest judging for floral. Hopefully everybody's been watering their flowers because we are a little short on rain again this year, as we were last year, so.
Okay.
Anybody want to help, we'll be there.
Matt, any new or unfinished? Okay, nothing for me today. Our future meeting schedule, historic preservation has been canceled. Committee of the Whole has been canceled. Dan just spoke about beautification, contest judging, Wednesday, June 23rd. Intergov, Monday, June 28th, and Village Board meeting, Monday, June 28th. Can I get a motion to approve this schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Take the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
And with that, no further business to attend to. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Take the roll, please.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger? Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes. Thank you.